Good morning. I'm Tatia Davenport, CASBO CEO, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to our webinar today in partnership with F3 on the legal considerations for AI in education. Before we get started, I just want to note that the session is recorded and the presentation will be shared in the chat window, so you'll see that there. We are also taking our questions in Q&A, not in chat, in Q&A, so that if there is by chance a question that we're just not able to get to today, we've got a wonderful record of that and can circle back with you, the viewers. So again, welcome to Legal Considerations for AI in Education. We are so pleased to have Gretchen Shipley, a partner with F3 and just a seasoned professional in this topic of AI. Gretchen leading our conversation today. Gretchen, welcome and take it away.
Thank you so much, Tasha, and to CASBO and everyone joining us this morning. So as Tasha mentioned, I'm a partner at F3 Law, and we're a full-service education law firm, but I have the pleasure of chairing our legal practice dedicated to education technology specifically. And I believe we have the largest in the country. And we started it about 10 years ago. And really that was born out of, I've been doing this almost 25 years. I've been working with CASBO for almost 20 years. And my whole background was purchasing business and facilities, but really contract review. And I did a lot of purchasing work. I helped draft the guide to purchasing and bidding, and all of that work was contract review. And so many of the contracts coming through for technology were so unique and so different than, say, public works, that we really developed a whole legal practice just dedicated to student data privacy and social media and all the challenging issues about navigating technology in education. And so it's really been, now that then came distance learning and then came AI. And so this past year has been really fascinating from a legal perspective, navigating AI in the education space. And I know you're wondering why you're hearing about this from a lawyer. Because I go to tech conferences and I see the amazing AI technologies that they are selling to your staff members, whether it's the business team or the teachers in the classroom, and they're very impressive. But I don't know that anybody is talking to the district administration about what they should be looking for and potential safety issues and how to evaluate these different tools from maybe a risk management perspective. So my objective today is to give you all the most basic, practical takeaways. If I could tell you 5 things you should look at when you are evaluating an AI tool and what you can pass on to your team, that's my objective. At the end of this, I know CASBO is going to tell you about more work they're doing in AI if you want to do a deeper dive. But today is sort of an awareness campaign of, hey, I partner with you to make sure that school districts are safe and not stepping into it from a legal pitfall. I'd be a wealthy lady if you just got sued all the time and I defended big class action lawsuits. But really our objective is, how can we put some preventative steps in place, maybe some policies or some protocols? And that's what I want to talk through today. The other thing is, I've been doing that. I spend all year, more than a year, but all my time now reviewing AI contracts with school districts, and you can learn from maybe where I have lots of interesting stories about where school districts maybe rushed into things or questions they could have asked or done things differently. And I'm excited to share those examples with you. And again, there's a Q&A, and so feel free to ask questions, and we'll definitely save time at the end to go through some of those questions. So maybe some of you came to the CASBO conference. We did the same exact presentation, but it was Taylor Swift themed. I hate to tell you, but there's no sequins or music or friendship bracelets today. We're getting down to brass tacks. But I did thank CASBO before this started about how excited I am to meet with this group in particular, because I have met with CSBA members and the AXA and school administrators, the superintendents, and I keep saying it's the business team. You all are contract review and risk management and purchasing and maybe data privacy compliance. And it's really important to me that at your level in your department is where I think there's the most need to have systems in place. You have the opportunity to make the biggest impact, I think, within the district. And Anyway, so I'm excited to be here, and I will get started. So the first thing, and maybe some of you already know this, but this is what I have to tell when I'm meeting with, school board members or administrators who are new to AI. So I'm trying to advance my slide here. I have to point out that, Tasha, did my slide advance okay? Okay. So you all may already know this because you're smart people, but AI, it is not about how do we prepare for AI coming. AI is here. It's already in our everyday lives. You may know that it's in your navigation system when you get in your car, and your car tells you how many minutes it is to the grocery store when you didn't ask that you're going to the grocery store, or to tell you to go there, or it finishes your emails for you. AI is already embedded in many of our technologies. Zoom will pop up and say, do you want to take AI notes? iPhone is putting AI. So it's already here, and it's already being updated in a lot of your business operations technology and your educational software. So it's not only tips for evaluating tools you want to adopt, but what about the tools you already have in place that are doing upgrades and updates? And what level of responsibility does the district have? And what kind of questions do you need to be asking? So that's where I just want to start the foundation that AI is here. And it's hard to juggle this, the messaging, and that's why I want to empower you all as leaders. There's going to be a lot of fear factor from your school board members or parents, but it's just, again, we'll talk about this in more detail. How do you balance the practical reality that AI is embedded through most technology now, and folks being afraid of it and asking lots of questions and being prepared to answer those types of questions. So here's the fun part for me, where I get to share some of my stories about the different types of AI projects and how you can learn from them, things I've worked on. But the message here is AI is not the IT guys. I said that in quote marks. I know not all IT folks are guys, but a lot of times they say, oh, it's an IT issue. And as you may already know, it impacts all areas of district operations. And I can give you a few examples of where we see it coming into the district. And my goal here is, how do you as a business office harness and manage the fact that AI is being incorporated from all different areas? So in the applicate, I'm not going to razzle dazzle you with like demos of how cool AI is. It is cool. Just trust me, it's amazing. And I'm not trying to say you shouldn't use it. I just want to help you all put guardrails in so you can use it responsibly and make sure you have safe tools in place. So the business office, you all may already know this. I hear you can do things like put your general conditions, feed them into an AI tool, and it will spit out a draft of an RFP. Or I've heard school districts using it for payroll processing, or they use it to route students for transportation. And so just a few things that pop into my head as the lawyer is, okay, well, if it's like your Uber app and it shows you where the student is and what time they'll be home, is geolocation tracking of students going to be okay with all your parents? Or the payroll processing. We need to make sure that information regarding their bank accounts isn't going into, say, an open generative AI, that it has, the right cybersecurity measures in place. The other area where I have dealt, this was a fascinating story, was a surveillance system. So there are AI upgrades to your surveillance system that you can put in place where AI can do things like detect guns, more so than a human eye ever could on a school campus. Of course, just to answer that question that popped up, yes, I believe they're going to share the slide deck. But let's say, of course, we want to be able to detect a gun. We don't want school shootings. That's very important. And an IT professional contacted me and said, Gretchen, will you review our new AI technology? We're going to stop school shootings. It's going to my board in a week. Can you review it? I said, send me the contract. And it was 1 page. And it was from Hewlett Packard, a very reputable company. I'm not saying anything bad about Hewlett Packard, great reputation. But I think mostly their work had been done in the private sector and maybe not K-12 public education. I told the IT director that I don't think it's 1 page. There has to be more to this. And so then he went to HP and they sent me 90 pages, which I reviewed in a week. But what I found was, the devil's in the details, and this is where you business folks come in, is it used biothermal it collected biometrics from the students or anybody who came on campus. It did license plate readers. It also did facial recognition, and it used AI. And, the benefits of it were that it could reduce guns on campus. They said that it had the ability to reduce human trafficking. All of those are, of course, benefits. But I also shared with them that, that's a community. I could come up with a legal argument of how you could get around those 4 different privacy issues potentially. But that's a communications issue too. Your parents, this was in a border community. I'm based out of San Diego County. And I was like, not everyone's going to be comfortable with the license plate readers and the facial recognition tracking. And the real kicker, and I'm glad I have the business, you'll appreciate this the most, business team, is that it was a 5-year contract for $9 million with no termination clause. And that has nothing to do with AI. I was like, if you don't like this after a year, you still had to pay full freight, the full $9 million to get out of it early. And so I did have to go back to the IT director and said, great program, school safety, keep kids safe, but there's pros and cons to this. And that is one where they just, they were trying to do something positive for their district. And you all often, I would assume, are responsible for approving contracts or recommending them to your board. And so again, devil's in the details. Either you all need to be reading those terms and conditions or work with your legal counsel to make sure somebody's reading those terms and conditions. Even the state of California, moving on to kind of my district leadership category, the state of California put out a chatbot to help students with their FAFSA applications. And they asked us to review it, 56 pages of terms and conditions. And we went through it, and there was real red flags, which we've since shored up. But, just sometimes they didn't know what to look for. The software companies are not designed to work with students and education or know the California education code. But the FAFSA AI chatbot and it's a great program, but it's to encourage high school seniors to apply for the FAFSA. And it was a chatbot that was going to go to their cell phones. And they said it was emotionally intelligent and it would engage with students to get them to apply for the FAFSA. Well, I have a 17-year-old high school senior. Emotional intelligence is like an oxymoron. These kids are not going to know that this isn't a human talking to them, or at least my son. So the point being, there was a lot of safety measures we put into place. One was not every student has a cell phone. And we said, look, this has to be equitably available to all high school seniors. So we came up with different methods in which it could be deployed, their Chromebooks or their website or whatever the case might be. But also, their chatbot wasn't limited to talking about the FAFSA. And I said, look, if it's emotionally intelligent, you don't know what, there's a mental health crisis. Who knows what these students could be engaging with the chatbot about, and what level of responsibility does the school district take on if the student says, I'm going to come and bring a gun to school tomorrow and shoot somebody? Does the district have some sort of responsibility because they made that chatbot available to the student? So that's another guardrail we put in place. We limited the chatbot and the knowledge base to just be about the FAFSA, sense. And then we also put in a threat monitoring component because it had the emotional intelligence component. We just wanted to make sure that if students were expressing self-harm or threats of violence against the school, that the software company took the responsibility for monitoring that and notifying the school. So again, we also had to add parent consent, because it was resharing the student data beyond the school environment. And we'll drill down on that in more detail in a minute, but these are just examples of well-intended technologies, really strong benefits, positive benefits, but we were able to capture some of the legal issues before they were rolled out. And the software companies aren't necessarily looking out for these things. Okay, just a couple of areas I also want to mention that might not come across your radar is special ed. Big impact there because some parents are asking for AI accommodations. So note-taking, AI note-taking is amazing. If any of you haven't tried it, I think I'm losing my memory. So when I get the AI note-taking after a meeting, it's very, very helpful. However, with a student, I would want to make sure if it's an open AI tool that their parents consent to it, or that the content that comes out of it is accurate. Sometimes AI is not always accurate. The other thing we've seen with AI note-taking tools, particularly in special ed, but it could happen anywhere, is recording meetings without permission. They just want to take the notes, but let's say it's an attorney-client privilege communication, or it's a confidential settlement conference that might take place in the course of a special ed hearing. Note-taking tools might breach that confidentiality. Also, the transcripts. A lot of parent advocates want to use a transcript from AI and submit it to OAH for their hearing, and it's not always accurate. Okay, one other thing about special ed, teachers are using it to draft IEPs, and there are vendors out there encouraging them to do this and how great it is. I just want to caution you all, and again, this is when we get to what you can pass along to your staff. If you're a special ed teacher and you want to use ChatGPT, the open generative AI version, to draft an IEP, I hope they don't use the student's name, their disability status, their medical information, because they've violated that student's privacy. You could do that if you anonymized it all, but again, they need to be really careful about putting personally identifiable information if they're going to use open generative AI tools like ChatGPT to draft an IEP. Lots of acronyms. Okay, staff. Here's a staffing one. I work with a district that is using a program called Work Helix. Maybe you all have heard of it. And what they're trying to do, you're all experiencing budget cutbacks. And I know many of you are going from being like a director of transportation to now director of purchasing and maintenance and operations and like 5 other jobs. And so you're trying to figure out, how can I do all this for the same salary? And so there's a lot of helpful resources to figure out how you can come in and streamline and make your job more efficient. Well, there's one tool called Work Helix that I know a district is working with, is they feed in the job descriptions of every position in the district, and it spits out which positions can be eliminated and replaced with AI and which job duties can be replaced with AI, which again, efficiency, budget cutbacks, that's important, but I anticipate the labor unions would not be comfortable with that. And so that's another stakeholder group that, as you're evaluating AI, you want to make sure that you're bringing your labor union into the conversation. Also, teachers are using AI and things like ChatGPT to draft lesson plans, or sub-plans. We have to remind them that they have a responsibility, that they're accurate. AI can really spit out some inaccurate information. Okay, and lastly, okay, students. I mean, that's the one that it all first started of, are they using ChatGPT to draft an essay? We'll get to the policy and how you can address misconduct. But really, I think most school districts are at the point of realizing they need future-ready learners, they need future-ready workforce. There are educational tools adopting AI. How can we do it in a responsible way? So this is all the lead up to, I promise, what was my basic 5 easy tips. But before we get to that, I just want to also mention the balance, because I talked earlier about how you will have people in your school community, and maybe you're part of it, is you read these articles about the dangers of AI and how it's going to, blow up the world, or really on the school level. I mean, you all probably saw in the news what happened at Beverly Hills, where the middle school students did deep fakes and they had nude images of other students. And we've had a case where 2 kindergarten teachers had on their website reading students a book at nighttime on their website, a video, and then it was overlaid with pornographic voiceover. We can't stop all misconduct. The objective is, how can we have procedures and processes in place to hold them accountable and stop it? Just like if you saw something on social media that was inappropriate and you want to block it and take it down, same with your AI tools. How can you react quickly? I mean, prevention first, how do you do some digital citizenship so they don't do it in the first place? And how do you have procedures in place that you can take misconduct down? And finally, how can you hold them accountable? And that's usually in your policy language. And at the end of this, I have some recommended policy language. I have some sample policies I can share with you all. So that's just sort of, the big picture importance of balancing the negative, the fear factor, with all these amazing benefits that you can have from a business operations and educational standpoint. Okay, 5 safety tips. Here we go. If there's one thing you can take away from today, like the most basic thing is, do not put PII, personal identifiable information into open generative AI. So that is, like I was talking about, that's something you can share with your staff and with your students. No PII. And just to explain briefly the difference between closed and open generative AI. So closed AI would be if your district used a system that either you created or maybe the software company is specific to the education environment or a business operations environment where it does not reshare data outside the school system. That would be a closed system. That's much safer than an open generative AI, which is like the free version of ChatGPT. But the open generative AI it's all that generation that makes it so incredibly intelligent. So open generative AI is the free version of ChatGPT, where you input a prompt. You know, Gretchen, draft a presentation about legal considerations in AI, and it could spit out in 30 seconds a 10-page presentation. But then that information is shared again and again and refined into a knowledge base that in the school that would be outside of the school system. So open generative AI could be, you know, again, the free version of ChatGPT is open, it regenerates, it reshares the data. And so if students are using it to write a personal statement or a personal essay, it is resharing their personally identifiable information. It's resharing it outside the school environment. So we just want to make sure they know, or staff members know, like, don't put your name and address and phone number in open generative AI. So no PII. So if you have professional development back to school, or you have policies that you're rolling out, that's a real easy takeaway to share from today. And then my second one is, and this is where you business friends come in place, make sure your team knows, your district, that software agreements, whether it's a software program that you download or it's an app, that you have a process in place to vet the terms and conditions. Somebody should be reviewing those terms and conditions. And we have been doing this for years for student data privacy, because California has very specific laws about student data privacy. But AI takes it to the next level. So first, we just need to make, so you probably have a contract vetting system in place. Make sure everybody knows about it. Make sure they know that free software also should be reviewed, because free isn't free. How are they making money? They are either selling targeted ads to students, or they're taking their data and selling it, both illegal. So even if it's a free software, that's usually where teachers get tripped up. They think, well, I don't have to ask anybody permission because it's free. Didn't cost anything to the district. Well, it could cost them a lot in legal liability. So again, have a vetting protocol, contract review, and make sure that your staff knows that their contract should be processed through that vetting protocol. And then it's helpful if you have the means and the resources, once you review various tools, if you have a list of pre-approved tools you can use. That's just a helpful tip that some school districts do. And I'll talk in a minute about AI being kind of the next level of student data privacy. Just because it meets student data privacy terms, it still may have a privacy violation if you're an open generative AI. So again, that's part of that evaluation process. So safety tip number 2 is have a vetting process and make sure that your staff knows that AI, educational software, AI tools go through the contract review and vetting process. Okay, safety tip number 3. You may want to, I mean, this isn't critical. It'd be helpful if your vendors notified you of an update of AI so that you could go back and do that critical review. So some school districts are proactively notifying vendors, like, please expressly notify me if you're going to upgrade with AI. You know, when you charge your cell phone at night and you wake up in the morning and it tells you that there's been an update and you don't really know what happened, you all want to know if open AI has been added to your software, because it changes the terms of what you originally agreed to significantly, and it changes the data privacy settings. So make sure that your vendors are sharing that with you, and put some of the burden back on the vendors to work with the district to keep students safe. Okay, the fourth one is threat monitoring. I mentioned the interactive AI chatbot earlier. That's one example with that had emotional intelligence. I was really concerned about students maybe sharing something about self-harm or a threat against the school, and what is the district's level of responsibility? Well, that also comes up in two other areas as well. Every school district has network monitoring software. And network monitoring traditionally is for things like bad words or pornography, and probably detects threats also, but they're using a lot of AI to do that threat detection. The other one is all these counseling tools. There's a lot, I mean, there's a mental health crisis. We have a lot of counseling tools for students available now, but they use AI to do threat detection. Review those terms and conditions. What level of responsibility are they willing to take on to do that threat monitoring? How do they notify the district? How accurate is it? Do they distinguish between, are they doing a search for the movie Suicide Squad, or are they expressing self-harm? What quality of threat assessment is it? And I'll give you an example. I just reviewed a contract for one of these network monitoring companies. So you pay a company to monitor your network for threats, and it said, and we take no responsibility if we fail to detect a threat and fail to notify you. Like, then what are we paying you for? Like, isn't that the whole purpose of your business? So again, just make sure that you read it though. Make sure that your AI tools, the ones that are interactive, have threat assessment, or if they don't, you may disclaim that to parents then. I mean, something just it's something to take a look at and evaluate it. I did skip one step, one comment that I want to make to this group in particular. It's not my typical slides, but we're going 2.0 here with the business folks. I talked earlier about your vetting protocol and your vetting system, and I talked about student data privacy. When you are reviewing software contracts, it is not just the privacy agreement. Often there's a services agreement. There is a maintenance agreement. All of that composes what are you purchasing on behalf of the district. So I talked about the surveillance software. I said it was 90 pages. That's because it's like 4 or 5 different agreements put together. The privacy agreement might have talked about the AI software, but the $9 million for 5 years was just in their standard services agreement. So sometimes I find that business teams or tech teams don't realize they review them for student data privacy. And then I'm like, somebody still has to review the actual contract terms. So you as business folks, you know that, but make sure it's a comprehensive review. Sorry, I skipped over that when I was talking about vetting terms and conditions. So again, this is my safety tip number 4. Threat monitoring, the reason why I'm really emphasizing it, one, we care about kids, of course. It is the biggest area of legal liability. The legal standard for a school district is if you knew or should have known that a student was going to harm themselves or harm somebody else, the district's responsible. So when does that should have known kick into place? If you are providing them with the tool, an educational software tool, and you are actually actively monitoring it and have the capability to do it, did you know that there was a threat, or should you have known that there was a threat? There was one case where a student said they were going to harm themselves. The school district didn't tell the parents. They didn't do enough to stop it, and the student did take their own life that night. And the school district, it was a $10 million lawsuit, and that was quite a few years ago. So it'd probably be $20 million. And so, I'm not trying to sound jaded, just the lawyer in me is like, the risk management folks on this call know what I'm talking about. It's a real area of potential liability if students are able to freely engage with a chatbot about their feelings and their emotions and their struggles, and if it's not monitored or not caught appropriately. So that's why you want to make sure you take a close look at that when you're doing your contract review. Okay, last tip. Evaluate when parental consent is required for open generative AI. And I actually have a flow chart that I will share with CASBO. and they can pass along to you or include it in their resources. But this is the biggest legal departure from your traditional educational software. So those of you who are on this call who maybe do the data privacy review or the contract review, this is where educational software and open generative AI kind of take two different legal paths. And so some open generative AI, in my legal opinion, now requires parent permission. And I'll explain why. But it depends on whether it's open generative AI or closed AI. So closed AI doesn't necessarily require express parental permission. Open generative AI does. And I'm going to give you a very quick little legal explanation, law school time here, really quick. So FERPA, which was written in the 1960s and covers privacy of student educational records. Now we're talking about student records here. What FERPA said in the 1960s, and it's still the current law, even though they didn't have computers back then, is the baseline rule for FERPA is if you ever share a student's educational record, you need their parent permission. And then there's a whole bunch of exceptions. So one of those exceptions is called directory information. So if we're just talking about their name and address and phone number, you don't necessarily need parent permission. You just do your annual notice. Parents have the right to opt out as to whether or not their kids' pictures in the yearbook. That's the directory information exception. The other exception that comes into play a lot, and primarily with educational software, is called the school official exception. Educational software acts as a school official. I will give you an example. Your data management system. Let's say you have Aries data management, and it collects all the attendance records and all of the grades and all of this emergency contact information. You couldn't have parent permission because you wouldn't get it 100% compliance and the system wouldn't be effective. So educational software that you use in the education, to do your business operations, educational purposes, you actually don't need express parent permission because it's considered a school official, a quote unquote school official. Doesn't require parent permission. It's a school official as long as it meets two criteria. The first is there's a legitimate educational interest in the student's educational record. So Aries has a legitimate educational interest in knowing the student's attendance, and it limits resharing of the student's data. It can't share it beyond Aries, the company you're contracting with, or their sub-processors. And that's where open generative AI is different. Open generative AI does reshare their educational records. If they're writing an essay through open generative AI, like a ChatGPT free version, so that is an area where I really think that it no longer falls under the exception to parent permission and defaults to the baseline rule that if you're going to allow student records, student educational information to be reshared in open generative AI, you likely need parent permission under FERPA. And that's why it's important that staff have these tools reviewed by the business office or somebody to ask the question, is it open or closed AI? If it is open, is there a privacy setting? Many of them have now added the feature that you can toggle a switch and make it closed AI. Fine, don't need parent permission. It's only if it remains open, or can they then anonymize the data? Then that's okay. You're not putting personally identifiable information in there. And this is all in my flow chart that I'm going to share with all of you. But if you get to the point where their personally identifiable information is an educational record and it's going out through open and generative AI, then you probably need parent permission. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that, you want to use ChatGPT in the classroom so that they are future ready learners. Make sure you send a permission slip home. And here's some key components of what can be in that parent permission form. And I have sample forms, but what's the educational benefit of the AI tool? What data is being collected? How it's being reshared? And then the lawyer in me always serves in a school district liability waiver. And you're not going to hold us responsible if there's misuse or misconduct or something of that nature. So that's sort of my fifth safety tip. So again, 1, no PII. 2, have a vetting protocol in place. 3, get notice from your vendors when there's AI upgrades. 4th, do some threat monitoring. And 5th, know when you need parent permission. Okay, almost done. We're sliding into home plate here. Your policies. So every school district has a different approach to whether or not they want to adopt a policy, whether they want some guidelines. It's summer. Now is a really good time to evaluate whether or not you want to put some guidelines in place for the next school year. So here are just some key components that I think you all should be thinking about. The first is equity. Make sure that whatever tools you're adopting are available to all of your students equitably. The second is making sure your staff members know that if they're using AI to generate lesson plans, that you minimize any bias or reduce bias or eliminate bias and make sure they're accurate. So bias, I have this image up here. This is example of where they put a pixelated image of Barack Obama into ChatGPT and asked it to provide a cleaned up, unpixelated image, and they made it into a Caucasian male. It just shows the inherent bias that can exist within AI. I mean, AI is mostly just scraped from the internet, and the internet is inherently biased. Accuracy. So you all probably know open generative AI or AI likes to always have an answer for you. So if it doesn't have it, it will make it up. It's called hallucinations. And so when we write, I mean, I don't use AI to write legal briefs, but lawyers have written legal briefs, and it will make up case names. So the analogy would be a teacher would write a lesson plan on the Civil War, and it would make up the names of battles and dates. You know, ultimately, at the end of the day, the teachers are on the front lines of the classroom. They need to make sure the content going to the students is correct. Okay, other tips that you want to put into your policy. Again, the data privacy and contract evaluation, I really emphasize that with this group, that your whole team knows there needs to be a review of the tools. We actually have a little free video on our website called Ask Before You App. I think it's 5 minutes, and it's called like, hey staff, just ask the questions before you download software in the classroom. And that was created long before AI came along. Okay, permission for student use. So that is to address the classroom. I mean, usually the typical language that you would have in your policy is students may not use open generative AI unless expressly permitted by their teacher or directed for a particular assignment or something to that nature. Like your general rule might be, let's not use it unless you have direct supervision and oversight and direction from a staff member. Then the prohibition on misconduct, that's not going to stop everything, of course, but it gives you the ability to discipline the students or staff when you've expressly told them to not misbehave and not create deep fakes or whatever the case might be using AI. Guidance on misinformation. This is a really hot topic. So there's already required curriculum for digital citizenship, and I would love to see that updated to include how all people, not just young people, can more easily spot when something is incorrect. I mean, misinformation. So you have to, whether it's election coverage on Facebook or, Instagram stories or TikTok reels or whatever the case might be, half of it is made up these days by AI. And there are ways to spot it, whether it's the images or the voice, and just teaching our young people, how can they validate and verify sources, just like you would any magazine article, I suppose. So just, making awareness that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And then finally, I brought up earlier the importance of bringing in the unions if you're talking about something that staff are going to be using, evaluate if there's a duty to bargain it with your unions. So you don't go through the whole process of adopting AI software and find out later that your union's not happy about it. So those are sort of my key takeaways on policies. I've shared some sample policy documents. Oh, I wanted to say this about policy adoption also. There are 50 pending laws in the state of California alone on AI. They won't all pass, but so some districts are just adopting guidelines right now instead of going through formal policy adoption, because it's likely to change as soon as new laws are rolled out. So they like to keep them a little bit more fluid. And then I just want to talk to you a little bit about the work that I do sort of on a day in, day out basis. And I've talked a lot about it already, but So we draft the policies, we do the training on the policies, we do all that contract review. Some school districts have capacity in-house, some don't. We help districts put together their vetting process, and we do data privacy compliance. And we drafted the state model data privacy agreement and the national model data privacy agreement. So that's a lot of the work we do. And then as long as I'm chatting with you all about AI and ed tech, I did want to share with you something that's exciting that recently happened that is totally separate from this. Is there was just a US Supreme Court case where we were the counsel, and I went to the US Supreme Court, and we got a unanimous decision, but it impacts all school board members and all public officials, including superintendents, on how they use their social media. And so that's something we're doing a lot of training on. I just wanted to put that little news flash in here because that's a whole separate, the timing is really good because during summer, a lot of school districts reevaluate all the social media accounts that are affiliated with their district and sort of do an audit and get some social media management is like a separate training that we do and that I do quite a bit. But I wanted to let you know that if you're a superintendent on this call, there's a new set of rules from the US Supreme Court that just came out. So I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I wanted to share my contact information, and I'm going to turn it back to CASBO for the questions and some exciting announcements. So here's my email address. I know that CASBO is sharing resources. If you have a question that's specific to your district and you want to email me, I'm more than happy to chat with you. I already work with many of you. And then with that, I'm going to pass it on to back to Tasha. And thank you.
Gretchen, thank you. I appreciate just the really practical advice for our team here on the webinar today. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. The first is how does site review the AI contracts as they do for data privacy? Do you happen to know?
Sorry, I took my audio off for a minute. So I happen to be general counsel for site. So I do know what site's doing. I don't know how much this is attorney-client privilege. So site provides data privacy review services for school districts. They are working on an AI addendum. But the point I made about parental consent goes above and beyond any data privacy agreement. And that's the flow chart that I'm going to share with you all when you need a data privacy agreement plus parent permission. So I don't know specifically what level of review they're doing for AI already. I think, they're making sure products are safe, but if you need parent permission, you need parent permission. What they do is they look at what does California Ed Code require? What do federal laws require? Do they meet all those standpoints? The problem with AI is there's not a lot of law in place yet. So, but FERPA does require parental consent in some conditions. So I know they're working on an AI addendum, but I don't think it's in place yet. So no, that right now it's still incumbent on the school districts to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
Thanks, Gretchen. It's so timely. I actually heard from Andrea today, so we'll circle back with site to get a good understanding of what they're doing. Our second question is really around the staff shortages, using translators on IEP compliance. So this particular member is using AI to translate the IEPs as a first draft and also using a German software. And so it's again, based in Germany, high privacy regulations under their form of government. The paid version states the data submitted is only translated and then deleted. Is this sufficient for us to use it for IEP translation? If we could get them to sign a California National Student Data Privacy Agreement, would that also make it okay? Any thoughts on that?
Sounds like a very specific legal issue. Okay, a few things. What I loved about this was you said it was a first draft. So there's lots of translation. AI is phenomenal for translation. And so a couple concerns a couple things to be aware of is accuracy and bias, cultural tone. You do not want to offend your school community if you have it translated through AI and they misstep on a cultural tone. So to the extent that you have a human in the loop, a second set of eyes, a third or fourth set of eyes to make sure that it's accurate and free of that bias would be important. And then as far as your particular concerns about using a German company in that particular contract, I mean, you're right. Germany has GDPR. it sounds like that. Without reviewing it, I can't tell you for sure, but it sounds to me like you're doing what you can to make sure it's data privacy compliant. So that's good. Oh, and translation services, same thing. If it's open generative AI, don't put any personally identifiable information in there. But if it's a letter going home to parents, it probably does have their address in it. So just something to think about and navigate as you use those translation tools. Are they open or closed? And if it's open, can you just draft the content without putting in their name and address?
And I love this. It comes up with every conversation we have with our legal partners, but it's really around rectifying, any past issues. So do you have recommendations if after learning all this great information today, you find yourself that perhaps you've maybe breached some confidential information? Are there any, guidance around the legal protocols of corrective actions that could be taken?
So my theme is better late than never. It is summertime. It is a great opportunity to go back and do what you can. I mean, this isn't great legal advice, but if no one's brought it to your attention, you're probably good for the school year. Like, let's hope so. AI is coming out fast and furious. It is a lot to wrap your arms around. You have a lot of staff members going ahead and using it without it going through this vetting process. I would say most school districts are in a place where people are using it. You don't know it. You're not aware of it. You haven't reviewed it yet, and everybody's in catch-up mode. So the objective here today was to say, how can you put a process in place? What does your contract review process look like? What should you be looking for? And how do you communicate those steps to your staff in preparation for the upcoming school year? And so, but if you've already done something, if you're going to use it again for next school year, make sure, let's say you're looking back and you think you probably should have gotten parent permission. Well, make sure you get it for this upcoming year. I mean, that's different than if a parent actually files a complaint. Look, if they file a complaint, that's a whole, that's a very specific legal process. So there's there's a FERPA complaint, there's a way you document it. If it's in a complaint through the Office of Civil Rights because they think something was biased or they were discriminated against because they didn't have equitable access, that's a different complaint process. But that's where you work kind of hand in hand with a lawyer. But I'd say generally, big picture, better late than never. Just get your procedures in place now over the summer.
Thank you, Gretchen. Again, just the awareness that you brought to the topic today is so valued by our members. I do want to let everyone know about the next steps in terms of AI and the CASBO community. The first is that we're offering a CASBO AI community. You see the QR code. This is where folks are going to be sharing resources around AI, what they're doing, ask questions, and we'll be monitoring that. So you'll find that on our website. Again, just one resource. We have a micro certification in artificial intelligence that you see here begins June 17th through August 26th. Gretchen will also be joining us there and really doing a deeper technical dive. Today, we brought awareness to the topic. We're going to go into a deep technical dive on that. And if anyone is not registered, today is actually the close of that session. I believe we have 100 or close to 100 registered to go through that micro certification, both individuals, but mostly we see teams and districts going through this together. So you've got today if you'd like to get more involved and again, get more of that deeper technical issue from in legal guidance as we move through that. And then finally, there is an AI roundtable that begins June 28th. And our AI roundtable, similar to other CASBO roundtables, are practitioners that are just joining to, again, have dialogue around some of the maybe recent issues that they're challenged with, and just kind of sharing of information. So I mentioned at the beginning, the community, that's more of an online version. The AI roundtable is for us to bring additional resources and conversations to this in a consistent cadence on a monthly basis going forward. So a few resources there for you. And we look forward to seeing you in those future endeavors around this topic. The bots are following when everything in my feed is AI related as we continue to delve into this. Gretchen, I just so appreciate your expertise and passion around this topic. You've been, as you said at the top of the hour, involved in a number of organizations helping us all share that perspective around what we need to be doing to support our students. So thank you for your expertise, your time, certainly the partnership that we have with F3. And we look forward to our next endeavor, which is going to be in our AI micro certification with you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Don't hesitate to reach out, members, if you have any questions for us or any additional resources that CASBO can provide. Have a great day.
Thank you.